Expanding the mind. Listen as we expand your mind and increase your intellect. Yes, it is possible. You can expand your mind by just looking at something, and as you are looking into it, and you start to expand the mind to fill the room that you're in. Filling the room with your intelligence, you can expand the mind.
There's a great quote by the poet Yeats, which says, "The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper." In other words, in our search for the miraculous, we find that it's often right before our very eyes, but we fail to see it, right?
As the caveman came out of the cave, he looked around, and his mind was expanded as he saw beyond. And of course, the limitations of his mind was he thought that that was all there was. And he climbed to a hill and saw another expansion, that there was more. And of course, the limitations of his mind, the small mind, thought that that is all there was. We're expanding the mind so that you start to see beyond the limitations. There are limitations, there are rules, there are walls on the room that you're in. There are constraints, there are rules, but the rules are not the infinite universe. They change from different places. All along an idea of a relativity. You are consumed with ideas of your rent, your mortgage, your bills, but you get the little ant at your feet who is part of your environment. He's not concerned about that, about the rent or the bills. He has his own rules and limitations to be able to deal with on his ideas of life and survival. And the bacteria on that ant is not concerned with your mortgage and rent and bills, nor is he concerned with the ideas of the ant's survival. That bacteria has its own consciousness and deals with its own limitations. And the virus on that bacteria is not aware of what's going on with the bacteria or the ant or the person. The virus has its own consciousness and dealing with its own rules and limitations.
If we could pinpoint our attention, right, we would see that even a blade of grass, when given proper attention, becomes a magnificent world in itself. And how do we focus our attention? With our tools, like the microscope, or even more interestingly, like the telescope, as it literally allows us to swallow the macro
perception of the physical.
Now we're expanding the mind. The caveman climbed to the top of the mountain, and he started to see different ideas. And then science allowed us that as we looked into an area, and I mean any area, we found that every area was filled with infinity. We could keep looking and looking and looking. You could spend the rest of your life studying the coffee cup in front of you, looking at its intricacies. You could spend the rest of your life writing thesis about just one coffee cup, because wherever you look, there is an infinity of perception, an infinity of existence, where there is an appearance of a limitation that then dissolves beyond it. Just as the wall is a limitation, but there is substance beyond the wall. The cave is a limitation, but there's substance beyond the cave. Hubble, which we named the Hubble telescope after, He thought that the entire universe was only just a couple of light years across.
Right? Think of a space telescope, which, as the poet-author Ross Anderson describes, allows us to mainline space and time through the optic nerve. Literally, a space telescope takes images of the deep field, takes images of the universe.
The telescope, the microscope, the incredible tools of the scientist have allowed us to expand our mind and look beyond, and be able to see things, and to increase our intelligence, to be able to make scientific theories and then test them out. With the telescope, we're able to look into the feelings of the universe and see other stars, galaxies, way beyond.
As nothing less than an ontological awakening, a forceful reckoning, a reckoning with what is, which allows us to contemplate space and time on a scale just shy of the infinite.
But can I inspire your mind? The technology can't take you to the infinite, it can take you just shy of the infinite. But can I inspire you? Can I give you the inspiration? You see, the telescope showed us an idea of a universe, of what we could see in this universe, what we could directly, scientifically perceive.
And now we know that it is 13.5 billion light years, because that is our perception, and the limits of our perception, because our perception of that is based on light, electromagnetic radiation light. And now people like Stephen Hawking are telling us that's just a perception, that's just another limit, that the actual universe is infinite.
There ought to be something very special about the boundary conditions of the universe. And what can be more special than that there is no boundary? And there should be no boundary to human endeavor.
Finally, Stephen Hawking realized there's no boundary conditions in the universe. The universe is infinite.
And infinite means that beyond the 13.5 billion, there's trillions and billions and etc. infinite universe. And maybe there are other places where there was big bangs that created other pools and things that we don't really understand. Dark matter, dark energy. As the mind expands beyond the limitations, going to the top of the hill and seeing more, and thinking and knowing that beyond what you see and perceive, there is more. And that's what science has done for us, to guide us into the ways of seeing more.
To turn our tools, these technological scaffoldings, to turn them into extensions of mind, to expand the boundaries of mind. You know, Kevin Kelly, co-founder of Wired, calls technology the seventh kingdom of life, the technium, subject to the same evolutionary forces. Human beings take in matter of low organization, and we put them through the filters of the human mind, and we extrude space shuttles and wireless communication networks and smartphones.
Technology, and all of these technologies, offer us a way to expand our mind and to see things beyond. But the very fabric of the universe is infinity. And these technologies can only intuit infinity, but the human mind can see it, bathe in infinity, feel it, and go beyond.
As we look infinitesimal, as we start to get down into what is the smallest. For a long time, we thought that the smallest thing was things like fire and water and earth and air. They were the constituents that made up everything. Democritus in Greece came up with the idea of an atom. An atom that was a small, tiny bit of the substance that would make up these things. And we thought that the atom was the base particle, until we found out that atoms are made of protons and electrons, which we thought the electron was a base particle and that all the electrons were the same. A fallacy of belief. Inside the atom, there are many different things. Neutrons, electrons, and we find out now that the electron is not a base particle, that it's made up of leptons and other energies. Because as we look deeper and deeper and deeper infinitesimally, we see more. We see consistently more and more. We see smaller and smaller. And there's the limitations of our science and the ability to perceive. And the base default belief should be that there is infinitesimal. Understanding an infinitesimal universe means that every electron would be different, made up of its own little particles, subparticles, and each subparticle would lead into other particles, into another rule of ideas of limitations. We find that there's a thermodynamic principle in our perspective of the world as we deal with it on a day-to-day basis. But as we get smaller and smaller, a quantum perspective takes over. At Planck's constant, where things now all of a sudden get quantum. And as we get deeper and deeper, a different perspective will come up, something beyond the current perspection of science. But yet, as a default mode, we must recognize the infinitesimal.
By going inward, we see that every person, every body part, every small piece of that body part, every cell, every part of the cell, every membrane, every Golgi body, every nucleus, going deeper as we go into the infinitesimal, getting down to the molecular, into the submolecular, into the atomic. What makes up the atoms? Into the electrons, the nucleus, the protons. What makes up these things? Our science has limitations of perspection, but the mind can see that the default setting is infinity, infinitesimal. What makes up these things? And every little thing would be a little different, recognizing that every cell, every atom could be a little different as we go deeper. And the laws will be changing. The basic rules of the chessboard will be different, as there might be large spaces of nothing. Large spaces where there's just absolutely nothing, but then other things will come as we go infinitesimal. Infinite and infinitesimal means everything. Infinity. Everything, not just is possible. Everything is, even our own mind, as we go deeper, more and more into the infinitesimal. And what is at the base of consciousness? Consciousness, where the mind can turn in on itself and see and feel. And then we go even deeper at infinitesimal again. Because infinitesimal means everything is. It's infinity. And only the mind can conceive of this, as now I've expanded your mind to the maximum.
The infinite, the infinitesimal, leading to a universe that is infinity to the power of infinity. And I've now expanded your mind to the maximum expansion, letting you see an infinite universe and an infinitesimal universe, which would mean infinity to the power of infinity, meaning that not only are all things possible, all things are. Because in every tiny grain of sand, there's an infinity to the power of infinity. And the point of consciousness is just a base. And wherever we are in this point of consciousness, there are limitations. There are barriers that impose us and rules that we need to look at. If we take the idea of two galaxies, the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way Galaxy, they're coming closer and closer in another million years. These two galaxies are going to collide. And these galaxies, this vast quantity of stars and mass and energy, they don't care about your rent bill and your mortgage, and they don't care about that. They have their own consciousness to deal with, their own limitations, their own rules as the two galaxies are coming to collide. We have a solar system, just a small, little, tiny part of our galaxy. Tiny part of our galaxy. And yet our solar system has laws that are imposed. Do we think that the laws of our solar system apply to every solar system in the entire universe? That's a limitation of belief. There probably is some variance. What we think of about a gravitation constant, we find out it's not really a constant. There's variance, there's changes. And if we take a look at the other constants of the universe, all the different constants, we find out that they're varying. There's a relativity. Because consciousness expresses itself through diversity and variability. Infinity to the power of infinity. All the little things that we think about human beings being green, that is happening someplace, somewhere, because infinity to the power of infinity means all things are. But in your world, in your consciousness, you are imposed with ideas, and human beings don't become all green. Just very few of them do, certain times. Because that is kind of a rule and a constant. And if we look at the human body, what are we? But a big group of energy, because we're taught in 5th grade that the human body is made of atoms. And atoms have protons and neutrons in the center, in the nucleus, and electrons in the outer states of energy. And the electrons, they don't touch. You see, they're made of the same charge, and they can't touch each other. So one atom cannot touch another atom. You can't touch the chair you're sitting in. Slap your hands together, and your hands can't touch. What actually happens is the electrons will start to rebel. They repel each other, and there's distances between the atoms. But there are photons that connect. Photons are light particles. How many electrons are there in one human body? If we take the number of all the grains of sand on the planet Earth, what's proposed, and times that by all of the visible stars in the sky, multiply the number of stars in the visible sky by the number of grains of sand on the planet Earth. And you know what we find? There are more electrons in one human body. And somebody wants to tell you that all those electrons are the same. It's not true. That's just the perspective of a limitation of the science. Imagine all the electrons in the universe. They can't be all the same. And now we have expanded our minds to an infinite, infinitesimal universe. And with that, we've basically challenged the idea of all the science based on its limitations. We understand that those limitations are real in their own perspective. Your rent, your mortgage, your water bill, your gas bill is real within the perspective of your consciousness and the reality and the laws of what is happening to you. It does not affect the ant at your feet, the bacteria on your skin. They are in their own perspective of consciousness. And it's wrong for us to think that consciousness is just human consciousness. Plants are conscious. They have a consciousness. They move. They just have a completely different type of consciousness where they have a different time frame. And they have different rules and limitations in their existence and their struggle. And as we expand our mind to the infinite and infinitesimal, just realize that the human mind is like a sky, clear blue sky, extending infinitely in every direction. And through the mind pass words, but the words are not the mind. The words are just passing through. They're just labels and concepts. Just like through the sky are clouds, but the clouds are not the sky. They're just passing through. The sky is an infinite and infinitesimal. Infinity to the power of infinity. Just like the human mind.
And what does this do when we are cracked open by awe, our agitating consciousness, right? In pain from the human condition, the mortal coil, all of a sudden connects with something grander than itself, connects with something radiant, with something resplendent. We are split apart by the majesty of the universe.
So don't become attached to the words, to the labels, but you have to deal with them. They have an effect on you. But you can also realize that's just part of a perspective. The wall in front of you is just a perspection of your thoughts on that limitation. As we get to an infinity to the power of infinity, we start to expand the mind and realize that these rules all can be a little bent. There's no such thing as a hard and fast rule. Every rule has its own little twists.
Become more than what we were. We experience the astronaut overview effect, what Neil deGrasse Tyson calls the cosmic perspective. We see the big picture. We are transformed, we are reset, and we are filled with feelings of grace and gratitude.
And now you can set yourself free from the shackles and chains of these limitations and recognize as you deal with them, there's a flexibility. And if your mind can generate new ideas, you can expand the flexibility.
Awe therapy made possible by these technological instruments such as space telescopes enlarge us, right? They bewitch us and they, oh my God. What they do for the mind is they allow us to fit the universe through our brains.
Technology has indeed helped us to expand our mind, but we have to go beyond just technology and recognize that the state of inner contemplation, meditation, that this is what has been used by the human race for millennia to find that awe, recognizing that completeness, that infinity, recognizing the power of the human body, the human brain, and the energy that's inside, because what we are is electrons.
With 10 to the 28 electrons in any human body, we must recognize that the human body has much more energy in it than mass. And even that mass is actually energy, as Einstein told us. E equals mc squared. That even mass has its ideas and expression through its relation and its inner energy. So energy flows through you and around you, through the mind. This leads us to an absolute conclusion of diversity. No human being can be the same. We know electrons are the same. Just the limitations. So people are diverse, different. And we now have to allow for the differences in diversity. That some people are conservative, some people are liberal. Some people are Puritans, some people are exhibitionists. Some people have ideas of expanding the mind, some people have ideas of contracting the mind. There's incredible diversity and changeability and plasticness in the human being. So now I've increased your intelligence by making you know that we need to shed our ideas of bigotry. Not that we have to trust everything that anybody says, but we have to tolerate the diversity. Not to impose our ways on others too hard, too harsh. We have to look at the limitations of what is law, what is love, what is compassion, and how we can express this.
We are all different. However bad life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. While there is life, there is hope.
So now I've increased your intelligence, and I've expanded your mind beyond the limitations into an infinity to the power of infinity. We will extend this course to more work. I welcome you to part 1 of Mind Expansion and Increasing Intelligence. This is Desiree Dubonnet, signing off for the day.